Carbs are not the enemy. In fact, avoiding carbohydrates could be causing more harm than good, especially when we're referring to the thyroid. When people decide to go on diets and lose some body fat, what's the first thing they're cutting out? Carbohydrates. Usually these type of individuals, they'll stay on very low calorie eating where they'll just focus on some protein, they'll focus on vegetables, maybe a little bit of fat. But by removing the carbohydrates, you're not doing any good for your thyroid. Your thyroid plays a huge role in all things progress. So it's really important to not only keep your thyroid healthy, but making sure you're keeping it healthy as you diet down. So in today's video, I want to talk about how carbohydrates help keep the thyroid healthy. So if you look back here on the board, I have T3, I have time. As we diet down, what happens is our T3, which remember is the thyroid hormone that controls metabolism, it starts coming down. So therefore, guess what else is dropping? Our metabolism. Now on the flip side of that, as we are in that calorie deficit, we are constantly eating low calories, our cortisol levels are being driven up. And when cortisol gets very high, it can cause a whole bunch of issues. So it can cause issues with sex hormones, downregulate our thyroid, of course, and then also can cause you to become insulin resistant, where your body can no longer utilize carbohydrates properly as if it could if you were insulin sensitive. So what is some corrective action that you can take? How can you ensure that you're keeping your thyroid healthy as you're trying to lose body fat? So first things first, if you're a chronic dieter or you just eat low calories all the time, please do yourself a favor and stop the calorie deficit. If you don't eat enough during the day, do yourself a favor and make sure you're eating at least at maintenance during the day, because your body's going to thank you. More specifically, your thyroid functions are going to pick back up. So when you are pulling yourself out of a calorie deficit altogether, you're going to want to increase carbs and fats, and maybe even protein, depending on if you're eating very low protein as is, because I know a lot of females are guilty of not getting in enough protein. So you're going to want to increase your calories as a whole, but mostly carbs, fats. If you are trying to lose some body fat, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I'm not here to dog you out if you are trying to lose body fat, but some things that you can implement within your dieting protocol are refeed days, where you're putting yourself back at maintenance for at least 2 to 3 days back to back per week, and you're increasing carbohydrates. So the spike in calories should come primarily from carbohydrates. The next one is a diet break. So a diet break is, think of a refeed day, but for a longer period of time. So diet breaks usually last no less than 7 days, and they can continue on for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. It really just depends on the individual. But when you go into a diet break, again, you're going to want to increase your carbohydrates. So majority of that calorie spike should come from carbohydrates. And here's why. So when we consume carbohydrates, what it does is it sends a signal to leptin, and it triggers leptin. Leptin is a hormone that is produced by our fat cells, and it's known as the satiety hormone. When leptin's triggered, it then goes ahead and it triggers the thyroid release hormone, which is within the hypothalamus of the brain. When that's triggered, it now sends a signal to the pituitary of the brain. Now, when the pituitary signaled, it's going to signal TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which then is basically going to release thyroid hormone, and it's going to help increase our T3 levels. So think it's going to give our metabolism a boost. So that is why when you are dieting, or if you are someone who you're always eating low calorie, you want to make sure that you're not avoiding the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are not the enemy. In fact, you need them for healthy thyroid function, as you can tell right here through the chain of events that happens when we do consume carbohydrates. So a lot of women specifically, they're the ones that are faced with a lot of thyroid issues. And a lot of this has to do with the fact of that they're always chronically dieting, or they're never eating enough. They'll just eat one meal a day. So you have to stop that. If you want to keep progress or have progress going, or just be healthy overall, keep the carbohydrates in. Your thyroid depends on it.